Hey guys, what's up? This is Alex2K and I'm here chilling with particles. Hey guys, no seriously, we're talking about particles today. Particles are pretty cool, they're pretty exciting, they're a little bit complicated. There's a lot of things to go over for particles. So we'll see what we can do within time frame. But right now I'm just doing a little playback here and it's just a little particle being emitted by a little field. And let's just change that background so that you guys get a better view at it. There we go. So you can see the particles being emitted by the emitter. Alright? However, particles and emitters are not necessarily correlated. So let's start with the principles, okay? You can access particles by going to the dynamics menu, and in there you'll see particles. So you can either do particles by creating a particle tool, and you can create particles by creating an emitter. The particles will create a particle, period. Just a particle by itself, like a little object. If you make an emitter, it'll make an emitter that emits particles. So it would make an emitter and it'll also make a particle and it'll link it together. It does sort of like a process for you. So that's something that's important. Also, if you do emit from object, it's the same principle. It's a little bit more tricky on that one, but again, it'll make an emitter, it'll link the emitter to the object, and it'll make a particle and it'll link the particle to the emitter. Right? I hope you got that. If let me just maybe want to try this, because this is the principles I think are more important sometimes than doing it itself. So let me just write this down. You got particles, right? You have emitters, and you have surfaces. And they are all independent from each other, okay? However, whenever you make an emitter, it'll make an emitter, it'll make a little particle, and it'll link the particle to the emitter, okay? So it does that. That's when you do an emitter. It does a process for you. And if you emit from object, you have a surface selected, and what's going to do is it's going to make an emitter, it's going to make a particle, it's going to link the particle to the emitter, and it's going to link the emitter to the surface. Alright? So that process is sort of like important for you to understand what Maya is doing. But keep in mind, please, they are independent of each other. Okay? They're not like, it's not like one of those McDonald's deal that you get two in one. It's independent. Okay, it's individual. So you actually have to do things individually, or unless you do an emitter, which does a little process for you. But anyway, so I got a little group of things here. I got all these emitters already organized for you, so I can talk about them. But I'm gonna go over the details of those once we get the principles of particles. Alright, you also have fields. Okay, so if you have fields, then what happens is a field affects particles. Alright? Okay, so let's get this party going. Start with the particle tool. Now if I come here to the particle tool, you can give a particle a name, and if you don't give a name, it's just going to do a default naming for it. You have sketch particles, which is just going to sketch particles like that. See? So I can sketch out particles. Once you press enter, they get created. Or you can take off the sketch particles, and in that case, whenever you click, whenever you click, that's where it makes the particles. Right? And you can create a particle grid. That's in width and height. Width, height, and length. I'm going to do it with text fields because it's kind of easier. So if I say position X, which is the minimum corner, let's say -5, Y negative, let's just make it 0, and Z -5, and maximum corner is 5, 5, and 5, then once I click here and press enter, oops, go close, particle tool. I guess I screwed up. Particle tool, let's see, -5 on the X, 0 and -5 on the Z, 5 on the X, 5 on the Y. Yeah, that's it. Oh, of course. Let's take that particle spacing. What the particle spacing does is it's keeping a certain amount of space between each particle. So if my distance from -x to maximum x is 10 units, because it's 5 and 5, and let's make a particle every 1 unit, and then I'll have 10 by 10 by 5. So click and press enter, and there we go. So now you can see my little particle grid, and it's got a particle every unit, and that's it. So it makes a little particle grid. And if you do it with the cursor, although you can do width and height, if I do click here, click there, and I come to the top view, and I click there, then there's my little particles. Okay, just to make sure, just add that guy there. This should be a rebellious particle. Alright, so different ways of creating particles, right? So let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to go to the particle tool. I'm going to sketch particles, and I'm going to write down the names of the particles while sketching them. So there's different types of particles. Okay, you have points. Just go ahead and press enter and hide that grid. So points. You have multi-points. Zoom out a little bit. You have points, multi-points. You have streaks. You have points, multi-points, streaks. You have multi-streaks. There we go, multi-streaks. We have points, multi-points, streaks, multi-streaks. We have points, multi-points, streaks, we have sprites. We have numeric. We have, my memory's not so good. Points, multi-points, streaks, multi-streaks, sprites, numerics. We have sphere, and we have cloud. We have tube, and we have blobbies. Not boobies, but blobbies. Those are really cool. points, multipoints, streaks, multistreaks, sprites, numeric, sphere, cloud, tubes, and blobbies. Wow, yeah, that's a lot of particle types. As I said, it's pretty expensive, the topics for particles. Now, here's the deal though. All these guys, points, multipoints, streaks, multistreaks, sprites, numeric, and sphere. Numeric doesn't really apply, but sphere. They are all hardware rendering. Hardware. That means that these guys render with hardware rendering. And these guys over here are software rendering. What does that mean? Software will render with mental array, it'll render with Maya software. Hardware means that it'll render with, theoretically, it's only supposed to render with what's called a hardware render buffer and hardware render. But, like I said, theoretically, but mental array also renders them now. So it's kind of exciting. I think it needs a little bit more work when it comes to mental array, but hardware render buffer is great. It's extremely quick. Hardware rendering is pretty quick. And when it comes to software, you know, the good thing about software is that, you know, they will show up in shadows and reflections and all that stuff. And that's also what's kind of cool about particles within mental arrays. Like, they can cast final gather, you know. So it's kind of interesting. But anyway, just keep that in mind. So you got points, multipoints, streaks, multistreaks, sprites, numeric, and sphere, which are the first ones I'm talking about. Then we have clouds, tubes, and blobbies. On top of that, you have all these emitters. You have omni emitters. You have directional emitters. You have volume cube emitters. You have volume sphere emitters. You have volume cylinder emitters. You have volume cone emitters. You have volume torus emitters. You have surface emitters, which can be either surface any of those, or it can be surface emitters. And you also have curve, which can be curve any of those emitters, or curve surface emitters. So it's a pretty expensive list, isn't it? So I'm gonna break this tutorial into probably 2 parts in case I mess up. But for now, these are all the types of particles and emitters. Alright, so I'll see you in a bit with a more expansive explanation, just a continuation of this, alright?